A woman appeared in Judge Frank Caprio's court and started being rude to the judge as soon as she arrived. The woman said that she would not pay the fine. "Do whatever you want." The judge said he would give her a payment plan to make it easier for her to pay the fine. But the woman's attitude was quite rude, and she said, "Do whatever you want, I won't pay anyway." Judge Frank Caprio, known worldwide for his compassion and kindness, got angry in the courtroom for the first time. This court proceeding was not published anywhere, but Frank Caprio did mention it in his book, and what happened afterward changed Frank Caprio's life forever. Welcome once again to Zam TV's videos. Viewers, who would have thought that a child who polishes shoes while going to school would one day earn the title of the world's nicest judge? It is quite difficult to guess from Frank Caprio's court rulings how deep the wounds are behind this smiling face, compassion, and empathy. Frank Caprio was the chief judge of the municipal court in the city of Providence, Rhode Island. From 1985 to 2023, he served in this position for 38 years continuously. He became known through a reality TV show, Court in Providence. Cases related to traffic violations used to come to his court, such as for wrong parking, overspeeding, or breaking signals. But Frank Caprio always tried to resolve all cases by joking with the defendants, smiling, and giving them a break on fines. Sometimes he would have the children who came with the defendants give the rulings, creating a humorous atmosphere in the courtroom, and other times he would hug the defendants himself, trying to share their sorrows. One day, a 96-year-old elderly man came to his court, accused of overspeeding in a school zone. When the judge asked him why he was overspeeding, the elderly man's eyes filled with tears. He said he was taking his 63-year-old son to the hospital because he has blood cancer. Without wasting time, Frank Caprio wished the elderly man and dismissed the case without imposing a fine. His cheerful demeanor was appreciated not only in America, but around the world. Judges from other countries have even acknowledged Frank Caprio as their ideal. But behind this smiling face is a painful story that brought them to this point, which they never imagined. After their retirement in 2023, they were diagnosed with cancer, and during this time, they began writing their book Compassion in the Court, which was published this year in 2025. There is an interesting incident behind Judge Frank Caprio's attitude that happened with his grandparents. His grandparents were completely illiterate. When they migrated from Italy to Providence City, their situation was so bad that the grandfather made a living by selling fruits from a cart. One day, he got drunk and made a ruckus with his friends, and the police caught him. Frank Caprio's grandmother borrowed money from the neighbors and went to court, offering money to the judge in front of everyone to release her husband, in gestures and broken English. At that time, their young son Tap was present, who knew a little English. The judge called Tap over and said, "Take your parents home. They have been released." When Tap told this to his mother, she returned, giving blessings to the judge. This little child was actually Judge Frank Caprio's father, who was lovingly called Tap. Frank Caprio says that although this case happened long before I was born, hearing the story of that judge's behavior, even today when I see immigrants in my court, I remember my grandparents and I try my best to ensure they don't face any kind of trouble. Frank Caprio's father's real name was Antonio Caprio Jr., but everyone called him Tap. When Frank Caprio's father came to America, he lived in a one-room flat where there was no hot water, 12 people in one room, and only the light of one lamp. They had to leave school in 7th grade and started helping their father, that is, Frank's grandfather, to support the family expenses. The family's situation was so bad that often lint would collect in their empty pockets. But Frank Caprio wrote that even that cotton wasn't in their pockets. Frank Caprio was born on November 24, 1936, and he lived with his father Tap and mother Philomena in that same cold-water, one-room house. If they ever needed to take a shower, they had to go several kilometers away. Their father, Tap, tried to set up several stalls, but due to the Great Depression, none of his ventures succeeded. Eventually, they got a job distributing milk, and from a young age, Frank Caprio also started helping them. Once, when Frank was 8 years old, he had to deliver milk to a house. This house belonged to a wealthy person whose son was Frank's schoolmate. Early in the morning, on an empty stomach, when Frank Caprio knocked on the door of that house, a strong smell of toast wafted out. When the door opened, his schoolmate was sitting at the breakfast table crying. Frank thought he might be invited in for breakfast, but instead, his friend was getting scolded by his father. His father pointed at Frank and told his crying son that he should be grateful for being lucky. Otherwise, he would be carrying milk in the snow like this boy. Little Frank Caprio was so upset by this that he wrote about it exactly as it happened in his book 80 years later. But one thing was that although Frank Caprio spent his childhood in very difficult circumstances, he was very happy with his life because he was raised that way. The situation was so bad that on winter nights, he didn't even have a blanket to cover himself. The milk company provided only one blanket, and it was placed over the milk to prevent it from freezing. At night, Frank Caprio and his brother shared that same blanket. Since the blanket had milk cream on it, a mouse would come every day to eat the cream, and Frank Caprio was very scared. At the age of 16, one day Frank Caprio's father placed his hand on his shoulder and said that you will become a lawyer one day. But remember my words, do not charge fees from the poor. At that time, Frank was studying in high school and did many part-time jobs to make ends meet. He worked with his father as a milk delivery man, distributed newspapers, set pins in a bowling alley, worked as a waiter in a restaurant, and even polished shoes by the roadside to cover his expenses. After high school, he got admission to a college in Providence itself. In those days, reaching college was a big deal for a poor family. Out of his 45 cousins, Frank Caprio was the second to reach college. In the final year of college, he applied to Boston Law University, which was his dream. But studying at this university meant he would have to leave all his part-time jobs. And if he had to do that, then how would he manage? He got admission to that university, but Frank knew well that his parents couldn't afford the expenses of this university. So, instead of going to his preferred university, he took a teaching job during the day and studied law at another university at night. During this time, another incident happened with Frank Caprio that he could never forget. One day, on the way back from law college, a classmate gave him a lift home. Frank lived in a clapboard apartment, which looked very shabby from the outside. Frank's classmate saw his house and said that if you want to become a successful lawyer, you cannot live in a house like this. Frank felt very bad at that moment, but without responding, he said thank you and moved on. However, he could never forget this incident. After becoming a lawyer, he also stepped into politics and once ran in the election for Attorney General. But the opposing party falsely accused him of organized crime and eliminated him. After this, he returned to practicing law. One day, Frank Caprio was having lunch. Just then, he suddenly received a phone call from the city's mayor. The mayor told Frank that one of the 3 municipal court judges in Providence had been transferred, and now a seat was vacant. Frank didn't understand why the mayor was telling him this at that moment. To which the mayor said, "I think you would be absolutely perfect for this post." Frank had never seen a happier moment than this before. It was not just a proud moment for Frank, but also for both his parents. Frank Caprio had also been a wrestling champion, and whenever he had a match, His father was always present to watch. When Frank became a judge, on the first day, Tapp was also present to watch his court proceedings. The first case was of a woman who had several $100s in parking tickets. As soon as she arrived, she started being rude to Judge Frank Caprio. She said, "I will not pay this fine. I have children, and I have to take care of their expenses too." Judge Frank Caprio put her on a payment plan. This means she could now pay in installments. But the woman was very stubborn and said that no matter what you do, I will not pay. On the very first day, Judge Frank Caprio got angry and had a boot put on her car and dismissed the case. This means her car will not be able to move until the fine is paid. After the court session, Tapp scolded Frank a lot. They said, how would that woman now take her children to school or get groceries? On the very first day, there was a frown on Tapp's forehead, and they were not happy. This day proved to be a turning point in Frank Caprio's life. After that, he decided that if he had to rule against any defendant, he would first understand how this decision would affect their family. He said that his father's scolding taught him something he couldn't learn in 5 years of law school. After this, Judge Frank Caprio created a donation fund, which he named after his mother, the Philomena Fund. This fund helps those in need who cannot pay fines. Judge Frank Caprio's fame was made by a TV program called Caught in Providence. The story behind this is that the judge's brother Joe had a great passion for shooting videos. He used to make videos of various things but was always in search of capturing a good scene. One day, someone gave him the idea to record the courtroom proceedings. Judge Frank Caprio was very much against this idea, but Joe somehow convinced him. The show was named Court in Providence, which aired on local cable TV. Because he was a judge, Frank Caprio could not charge any fees in return. Initially, this show was only aired on local TV, but after the advent of social media, copies were uploaded on the internet, and now these proceedings are watched all over the world. In this way, Judge Caprio became famous not only among the people of Providence, but also worldwide as the nicest judge due to his compassion and empathy. After holding this position for 38 years, in January 2023, Judge Frank Caprio resigned. A few months later, he informed the world that he was fighting back against an illness like cancer. On the 20th of August 2025, he was seen on a hospital bed, and in the video, he was seen appealing to his fans for prayers. The next day, on the 21st of August 2025, he left this world forever. He left behind courtroom memories that teach us lessons of empathy, kindness, and justice, as well as controlling anger. We hope you will like and share this video from Jam TV abundantly. Thank you very much for your loving comments. See you in the next amazing video.